Hey guys, it's Mrs. B again. So today I'm going to be talking to you about a portion of part one of The Book Thief. And you guys read Arrival on Himmel Street and Growing Up as Saumensch. So I just want to go over some of the important facts that you probably should have gotten from those chapters. The first part, if you have the book, it starts on page 19. I think it's a slightly different page if you're looking at the digital copy. But the first thing that we see is the death of Liesel's brother. So they're traveling with their mother to Munich, and we learn a little bit why shortly thereafter. But the brother basically passes away on the train. So it describes in a lot of detail what that looked like for Liesel. It also talks a little bit about the Fuhrer. You'll hear Adolf Hitler being referred to as the Fuhrer in this part. She actually was having a dream prior to when she saw her brother pass away, and it was about him. So you'll hear him being referred to as Adolf Hitler, the Fuhrer. There may be another term, although not in this chapter necessarily, that she refers to him by. And you're getting a lot of what's called allusions. So in literature, an allusion is when something from history is mentioned in a book or a movie, and that's something that most people would be familiar with. So when most people, for instance, hear the name Adolf Hitler, they're familiar with the fact that he was a leader in Germany. They may not know all the specifics, just like you guys might not, but you're familiar with the term. So, by the way, that's allusion with an A. So she's almost 10 years old at this point. Her brother passes away. It's a pretty traumatic experience for her. And basically they have to leave the train that they're on and bury him right off the train. So throughout this process, she notices that there's a book on the ground, and that was one of the questions that you guys had to answer. And it's the first book that she takes. So we don't really know why she takes the book. You will find out later why she takes the book, or like what it means to her, basically. And then they're both back on the train on the way to Munich. They also find out that Liesel and her brother were heading to a foster home in Munich, where supposedly they would have a better education and get more food and those types of things. So the mother's not able to care for them right now, and that's where we meet the Huberman family, who live on Himmel Street. So the next couple of, like, the end of this chapter and then the beginning of the next and most of the next is all about the Hubermans and what it's like to live there. So what else do I want to talk about here? You probably noticed right off the bat that Rosa, who is going to be her new foster mother, is not a very kind person. She frequently uses bad language. She's rough and tough, and Hans is pretty much the opposite of that. He is kind and quiet and kind of lets Rosa take the lead, and yet he's a very gentle man. So when we get to growing up as Saumensch is a German word which is filthy pigs. Yeah, basically. There's a couple of German swear words in this chapter, so you have to know what they are because Rosa uses them frequently. She refers to Liesel as Saumensch or to Hans as Stockrel all the time. So when you see them, you have to know what they mean. One of the first things that you guys learn about when you start growing up a Saumensch is that Liesel's father was a communist. And again, that's an illusion. Communism is a form of government. It was something that in Germany was not looked well upon. So her family, if they were communists, then they were enemies to the German government at the time. She doesn't really know what it means. She just knows that her mother says it's not important, and yet people kind of look at them strangely. So we'll find out a little bit more about that later. Her new house is pretty basic. It's pretty small. It's a lot of profanity from Rosa. She's constantly yelling at Hans, yelling at Liesel, calling them names. And Hans is the only one that seems to be able to calm Liesel. He doesn't really expect anything of her at this point. He just tries to get her to come out of her shell a little bit. On page 33, so looking at the bold parts. Always remember to look at the bold parts because death tells us a lot of things in those. It tells us a lot about Hans, the things he likes to do. He's a painter. He has an accordion. And he was in the First World War. It says he already cheated me in one World War, but would later be put into another. So there's a little foreshadowing there that he's going to be put into another war. And death says where he would manage to avoid me again. So he will have been, by the end of this book, in 2 wars, but has been able to avoid death within those 2 wars. He's called not special. He's very quiet and somewhat average, according to death. And yet he is very valuable to Liesel, and she discovers very quickly that he is a kind man. Rosa, on the other hand, is rough. Really rough. She does the washing and ironing for a lot of families in town. That's how she makes money. But at the top of 35 is that she did love Liesel. So it's just that her love was not a cuddly, snuggly kind of love. She had a tough love, but she actually does love Liesel. And that's pretty much how that chapter ends. Liesel is told by Rosa to call them both Mama and Papa from here on out, and that kind of seals the deal. And now we're going to get into, like, the bulk of the story. So I guess these are really background chapters for understanding what Liesel's new family is going to be like, and there are a lot of little stories that weave their way into this one. I guess what you need to know is that for reasons we don't really know, her mother gave her up. Her brother passes away on the trip, and she has this new foster family, and her stepmother, or foster mother rather, is extremely crass and tough on her, and her foster father is someone that she's going to grow to love and cherish very much. So I hope that clarifies a couple of things for you guys, and feel free to look up any of the allusions that you come to. So if you come to something that mentions Adolf Hitler, or like I know it mentions Hitler's Mein Kampf in here, we're going to learn more about what Mein Kampf was. But feel free to search for them and find out, even communism, check out anything you want to on these things. It will give you an idea of what's happening in the story a little bit. So if there's ever a question you guys have on any of them, I'll do my best to give you history, and I'm sure Mrs. Bogart will help me out too. She's a better historian than I am. So, all right, guys, it was good to talk to you, and I hope that helps out, and we'll be moving on with this next week. So have a great day, guys.